This video will demonstrate the basics of driving, making the car go where we want it to. We'll start with the parts of the car that let us do that, and then we'll see how to do it. Of course, we can't learn to actually control a car through a video. That requires skills that can only be gained in a car. But we can learn the what, where, and how through video and speed up the process of in-car instruction. You may know a lot about this already, but bear with it. There's a lot that you may not know. We'll start with the what and where. We'll introduce each of the car's controls with what they do and where they are. Then we'll move on to how they are used in driving the car. We'll start with the ignition. It supplies power to the electrical system. In the off position, there is no electricity to run the engine. Also, there may be no current to run the lights, wipers, or radio in order to keep the battery from running down if the equipment is accidentally left on. Finally, in this key position, the steering wheel is generally locked to discourage theft. Putting in the ignition key and turning to the on position allows us to operate the electrical equipment and check the warning lights. Sometimes a special accessory position allows us to operate electrical equipment without having the full ignition on. Turning it further to the start position will cause the starter to turn the engine. We release the key once the engine starts. Next comes the shift lever. It controls the transmission, which transmits power from the engine to the wheels. Sometimes it's on the steering column. Other times it's on a center console. At the beginning, the transmission will generally be in P for park. Otherwise, in most cars, the starter won't work. D stands for drive, which makes the car go forward and automatically shifts up through the gears to allow the same engine speed to make the car go faster. Cars have different numbers of lower gears. On long or steep downgrades, moving the shift lever down one gear may help slow the car. Lower gears are also useful for starting from rest with heavy loads. They may also be used when maximum power is needed to get a heavy vehicle up a steep incline. R stands for reverse, to make the car go backwards. When the car is in drive and the way is clear, we're ready to move out. The control that handles that is the accelerator. It regulates the flow of fuel to the engine, controlling acceleration, the rate at which the car speeds up. To the left is the brake pedal. A hydraulic brake uses fluid and pressure against the brakes to slow the car. With a manual brake system, the pressure is controlled entirely by the driver's foot. Most new cars these days have anti-lock brake systems, known as ABS. When we apply the brake fully, ABS regulates the pressure to get the most out of the brakes without locking them. We'll learn more about that later in the course. For now, the important thing is to know whether the car we are driving has manual or anti-lock brakes. This is what lets us go where we want to go. The steering wheel points the front wheels in the right direction. The rest of the car follows. These are the controls that handle the speed and direction of the car, referred to as the primary controls. Then there's a set of secondary controls. We can't show where they are because they differ from one car to another, but we can show what they do. There's a control to turn the headlights on at night and when visibility is bad. There's also a high and low beam control. Later in the course, we'll talk about when each is used. Parking lights let a parked car be seen by others. They draw less current than headlights and won't blind oncoming drivers. They must not be used when the car is moving. The turn signal lever lets us signal other cars before we turn or change lanes. Emergency flashers make lights at the front and the rear of the car blink simultaneously. They attract attention when necessary, such as when a car is pulled to the side of the road because of a mechanical problem. On some highways, drivers traveling at slow speeds are required to use flashers. Windshield wipers and washers help drivers keep a clear view of the road and traffic in wet conditions. There's a control to turn them on and a speed control to let us adjust the speed of the wipers according to the amount of rain. The windshield washers will help clear the windshield of dirt, particularly the spray that is thrown on the windshield by trucks and other vehicles ahead. There's a control to turn on the heat when it's cold and get cold air when it's hot. In addition to the car's controls, there are some gauges we need to know about. The speedometer says how fast we're going. The odometer shows the total mileage traveled by the vehicle. Often there's also a trip odometer that we can reset at the beginning of a trip to see how far we've traveled. The fuel gauge says how close to full or empty the tank is. We probably have some fuel left when it reads empty, but we don't count on it. The water temperature indicator shows the temperature of the water in the cooling system. If it rises out of the normal range, we need to check the cooling system right away. If it is cold, we let the engine idle for a minute. The oil gauge indicates oil pressure. Indicators just show when the pressure has dropped to a dangerous level. The alternator indicator registers the output of the system that keeps the battery charged. It is very important to learn the location and operation of all controls and indicators before we start to drive a particular car. We may have to use any of them when conditions change. It's dangerous to go hunting for them while driving. And anytime we drive someone else's car or rent one, we take a few moments to make sure we know where everything is.